My name is Annette Nugent and I've been the project manager on the Dublin City Cultural Audit and Map project. And Eamonn and I are going to talk today about the human challenge of this project. As we were saying, it's a dual aim project. So Dublin City Council wants to find out about the cultural assets of the city to help inform any decisions they might make in the future. But we also wanted to make this project workable and usable for the public as a resource about the culture in the city. So to make sure we always kept this to the centre of the project, we set up what we called an inventory working group, and that was made up of people who worked within Dublin City Council, but also people from the cultural sector who worked outside the City Council. And one of the first important jobs that they had was actually to decide what would not be on the map. What we really wanted to do was make sure that this didn't duplicate any of the other great projects going on in the city that give information about culture. So we decided from the very start what would not be included. So for example, it's not an events website, and neither does it cover things that aren't open to the public. So everything that is on this map is something that the public can easily access. And then that group also worked on deciding what would be on the map. And really after a lot of conversation, we distilled it down to places where culture happens and people and organisations that make culture happen. Which sounds simple, but actually in the background there's a lot of information in that. And when we dived into what we would put on the map, it covered everything from the obvious things like theatre and creativity and heritage, but also cultural activity like sport and science and even religious activity, because these are all the things that make up the culture of the city and what we do. We also gathered a lot of information about each of the assets in the background. Obvious things like what something was called and a description of it and a website or someplace where you can find more information about it. But also really important information about the geography of where it was. It's really important for the city to be able to pinpoint where assets are. That helps them in planning decisions or anything else they might use this information for. But it also helps people using the map, because what we found is that people really wanted to know what was near them and what they could access from a cultural point of view. So the next big challenge was, when we had all of this information in front of us, how do we distill it down and make it easy for the public to navigate their way through it? And for that, we started speaking to Eamonn and his team in McCann Dublin.
Thanks, Annette. So I'm Eamonn, I'm the digital director in McCann Dublin. So when the team from the culture company came to us, obviously a very exciting project, and we were really excited to be involved in it. Our kind of the first thinking was really about how we were going to create this like an intuitive, uncomplicated presentation of the data. You know, and obviously in this day and age it has to work across all devices, desktop, tablet, mobile, and potentially even in the future it could work on, you know, smart speakers and that type of thing. You know, we always approach these projects. There's an old book, it's about 20 years old now, by a guy called Steve Krug, and it's called Don't Make Me Think. So you know, that's kind of our mentality when we approach any projects. The one that came to mind, the project that our system that I'd seen before that really kind of came to mind when we were approaching this project is this Urban Daddy app, which is based in the States. And really, in that interface, what you do is you present it with your own circumstance right then and there, and it will suggest restaurants or bars in the area that you suggest that you have presented. And you know, it's very much where it kind of works very well is that, you know, it's you're not kind of learning an interface. You're basically just telling it what your circumstance is, and it's giving you results based on that. So that was our approach to this project, was really to try and come up with an interface that would work in the same way. We did a kind of a wireframing process on paper, where we basically just sketched out the interface. And then we worked with the culture company team to map the categories that they had actually created in the database to real world scenarios that a user would want to have to be searching against.
So we took our cue from what Eamonn was talking about, making information as simple as possible for the public. So then the inventory working group did a lot of work in actually grouping the information in a way that put the user at the center of it. And this kind of shows that we put the person using the site making the decision about what they wanted to do, grouped all the information into easily accessible chunks, like I want to get creative, I want to go out and about, and tried to present the information in that way to make it easy for them to navigate.
So then we brought the entire interface, the sketches and things like that, into an online version. So this was done in Adobe XD, and all of our designs were done in that interface. It allows us to kind of connect together between the different views of the system and to get a feeling about how it's going to work for the end user. It was done in desktop, and obviously it was done in mobile as well, to make sure that the same interface would work in both instances. And once we had that kind of shape to the entire system over the line, we then started looking at the design of the system, and we wanted to create a design and an interface that felt like it felt like a kind of a friendly presentation that, you know, was accessible, and it felt more like a kind of a peer-to-peer conversation rather than actually being you know, like the council telling you about cultural things that are happening in the city. So the logo for the Culture Near You site has this kind of sketched feeling. It actually was sketched, but and then digitized. But it kind of makes it feel very friendly and approachable. And you know, as an extension to that, then we worked with the culture company to create or to commission a set of icons, illustrations that they were developed by Paper Panther, and they, you know, really kind of add this level of kind of friendliness and approachability to the system. So combining the design of the logo, the illustrations from Paper Panther, we were able to create this kind of landing page, which is very, very simple. You know, it really only has, you know, in the view that you're seeing here, there's only really kind of 3 or 2 questions that are asked. You know, I want to learn or, you know, explore my options, or whatever the category that you select, and then you can then say, you know, near my location now, or you could say like a particular area within Dublin. And the system actually works to, it doesn't actually search just within the area that you selected. Also, it uses that as the center point and then searches kind of from a radius around that. So like, for example, if you picked a particular location and there weren't cultural assets in that category where you had selected, you may actually get some ones that are on the border with other areas that are around. So obviously this interface that was developed works on a desktop, tablet and mobile, which is obviously very important. And it makes sure that we made sure that all of the parts of the system were all kind of accessible and responsive in that way. Within the actual interface, we created a couple of little tricks that allowed you to be able to understand or to navigate between the results that were being presented on the map and with more detail, you know, the tiles that were showing on the right-hand side. So in the video that's playing here, when you roll over one of the nodes within the map, it would scroll on the right-hand side to where that result is. And then in the same way, if you actually roll over one of the tiles on the right, it actually raises up the little icon to show which one it actually reflects to. We also created a circumstance where when the results that are in the database, they have, for example, in this case, they have map views in them, but in other cases they may have an image, they may have like a YouTube video, they may have like a Vimeo video, something like that, or a SoundCloud piece of content. And in that case, we were able to extract out that content and present it directly within the interface, where you were able to kind of just look at the content that was in there and then move on to the actual cultural resource. Maybe it's a URL for you know, a Facebook page, maybe it's a website, or sometimes it was actually just an email address to get in contact with the people. But basically we wanted to just pass the people on once they have enough information to continue their journey and to kind of, you know, engage with that cultural asset. So in conclusion, really, as you know, if we were kind of giving you something to take home from our experience doing this project, the approach that we had is that the system, on the face of things, it feels like sometimes systems have to be very, very complicated to end users. But really, if you kind of delve into the information that's being presented, it's actually possible to create systems that are really, they aren't as complicated at all, and they're actually very easy to present to users with the capability that in the instance of this project, there is a much more complicated interface that's available for internal Dublin City Council users.